On behalf of NYU's Center for Ancient Studies, I want to welcome you to this year's Rosemary Lewent Conference, The Odyssey, A Cathartic Journey. I'm Desiree Sanchez Meineck, the Artistic Director of the Aquila Theater Company in residence at the Center. I want to thank the Director of the Center for Ancient Studies, Professor Matthew Santaracco, for his enthusiastic support of this project. I also want to thank Anna Donch, the Program Administrator of the Center, for her efforts to make this evening a success. And most importantly, we are grateful to the late Rosemary Lewent, who endowed this annual event. Her vision and generosity continue to make possible the work of the Center. I'd also like to welcome her son, Steve, who is with us here tonight. Thank you, Steve, for joining us. If you would like to learn more about the activities of NYU Center for Ancient Studies, please pick up a copy of the Center's fall newsletter at the registration table over there. And if you are a veteran or a member of the veteran community and would like to learn more about Aquila Theater's future veteran programming, please add your name to our mailing list, also at the registration table, or send us an email. Our email address is at the back of your program. And feel free to tell us what you thought of this program you're about to see tonight. Aquila Theater would like to also thank our funders at the New York City Department of Veteran Services and the Joseph P. D. Dwyer Peer Support Project, as well as the New York State Council on the Arts for their support of our Warrior Catharsis program. And finally, I would like to thank the veterans performing tonight who have thrown caution to the wind, took a chance with us, and went on quite the journey and are here to tell you all about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this brings us to this evening's event and the inspiration behind it. Aquila Theater has been working with the veteran community since 2012, using classical performance text to create dialogue about the effects of war between veterans and the civilian public. The programs created a plurality of perspectives as well as a supportive community of people. The usage of ancient texts have helped us navigate and understand the impacts of war and inspired many of us to think deeply about our connections to our past, our ancestors, our histories, our own stories. The application of collaborative theater practices with these profoundly resonating texts helped us to begin to realize our own transformative potential as individuals and as a community. Perhaps our veterans can speak more on that point tonight. The veterans here have all taken part in the Warrior Catharsis project, meeting weekly with me for 2-hour sessions over the course of 16 weeks. Together, we read the Odyssey, had deep conversations about what this story means for us, what it could have meant for the people who would have heard it thousands of years ago. We also lent our ears and hearts as we shared our own connections, stories, truths, and revelations. We built a new community, forged new friendships, and I believe we learned a lot about each other and ourselves in the process. The scenes that you will hear tonight were chosen collectively by the readers, and we can talk about why after the performance during our talk back, which, by the way, is a very important part of this program, so I hope you will stay and share your own reflections. But before we begin the performance, let me introduce our introductory speaker, Peter Meineck, who holds the endowed chair of Associate Professor of Classics in the Modern World at NYU and is the faculty director of the Public Humanities and Graduate Education Program in Arts and Science. Peter also founded Aquila Theater in London in 1991 and has produced and or directed over 50 productions and directed several national programs. He stepped down as artistic director in 2012 and now serves as Aquila's Director of Humanities Programs. Peter has published widely on ancient performance and cognitive theory applied to classical studies. He recently edited the Routledge Handbook of Classics and Cognitive Theory, and a new translation of Aristophanes' Frogs. He is currently completing a monograph on catharsis for Routledge, which will be published next year, and his new book, Tony Stark, Odysseus, and the Mythology of Marvel, Ancient Heroes in the Modern World, will be published in February 2026 by William Morrow. So let me introduce you to Peter Meineck.
Thank you. Are you going to switch this to me? Great. Thank you, Desiree. Thank you for coming tonight, and it's great to see so many students here. That might work. Great. So I have got 10 minutes to explain catharsis to you, which nobody has been able to do for 2,500 years. So I'm going to give it a shot, and hopefully this will help set a context for this program, which is taking veterans who are not actors or professional performers in any way and have them read the Odyssey, talk about it, work on it. And it's going to be a cathartic thing for them, I think, to stand up before all of you tonight and to read these wonderful scenes. So I start off with Flaxman's drawing from 1805 of this famous scene that you're going to hear later being read, of Odysseus just before he gets home. He's been gone for 20 years. He's in disguise. He's in with the Phaeacian court, and the bard Demodocus comes in to sing. And the bard sings a song of the Trojan War, actually sings a song about Odysseus, about the wooden horse. And you would think Odysseus would actually be quite proud to hear this, but in fact, he actually devolves into tears. And Flaxman's Odysseus over here is a very restrained view of actually what happens in this scene. Here's Emily's translation that you'll actually hear later. He's melting into tears, he's weeping as a woman, as if she's mourning over her dead husband. She shrieks a clear, high wail collapsing upon his corpse. The men are right behind. They hit her shoulders with their spears and lead her to slavery, hard labor, and a life of pain. Her face is marked with despair. And note what Homer says. In that same desperate way, Odysseus was crying. Now, this is an incredible moment because soon after this, Odysseus is going to reveal his identity. And this is the crux of catharsis, and this is how performance fits into catharsis. Catharsis is usually always performed when it's an emotional catharsis. So one can think of Demeter herself in disguise. In despair, Persephone has been snatched. She makes her way to Eleusis, and she's there again, like Odysseus, and I think the parallel is definitely marked. She herself is in disguise, tells a very similar story to Odysseus to do with coming from Crete. And she gets told a very rude joke. We don't know the joke, unfortunately, by Iambe, or Balbo, who is even a ruder joke, and involving a talking vagina. I don't know the joke, but apparently it was so funny that Demeter kind of fell off her chair, right? She then comes out of this sort of catatonic state of depression she's in, and actually, from that point in the Homeric hymn to Demeter, she too will soon reveal herself. And then Demeter gets really, really angry, right? And it's from that action that produces the deal with Zeus to share Persephone, which is why we're all eating now and not dead, right? So, catharsis is very important. And the other one I wanted to point out is in Book 1 of the Iliad, same thing, where Hera is threatened by Zeus, and she too goes into this state of despair and brings a pout on Olympus. And there's a performance of ultimately a famous story called The Return of Hephaestus, where Hephaestus, her son, himself performs the time that Zeus threw him off Olympus, and he fell on the Isle of Lemnos, and of course he was injured. And it took Dionysus, the great god of performance, an altered state, to go down there, get some wine into him, and bring him back up on the donkey and restore him to Olympus. And this too creates mirth amongst Olympus. The wine is poured, everything's okay. The performers, the comedy, the tragedy produces catharsis. We know that our famous muses, Orpheus, Musaeus, Thamyris, Eumolpus, are also cathartic. When they sing, people are charmed, people are moved, but they're also healers. So we see this very close connection between catharsis, medicine, healing, and prophecy. And this is why some other scholars get confused about what catharsis means. And the other element of catharsis we see in performance is these frenzied Bacchic dances to figures like Sabazius, Cybele, Rhea, the Great Mother, or Potnia, usually female kind of mother figures, and these wild ecstatic dances that are also a key feature of cathartic rites. In fact, Zeus himself gets to exist because he was hidden in the Cretan Idaean cave, and he had the Curetes, also known as the Dactyls, sometimes the Corybantes, who were these armed dancers who clashed their cymbals and performed this ecstatic dance so that it would drown out the cries of the child, and Rhea could hide him until he was ready to actually overthrow his own father. And caves are interesting, right? Because even way back in the Paleolithic period, people are having shamanistic, cathartic rituals in caves. And I think caves are mankind's earliest theatres, right? This is where we actually performed our stories under firelight and had these cathartic rituals. And those of you who know something about Greek religion know caves and cave-like spaces are really, really important in the Greek mind. And out of those caves come some of our most famous philosophers. Pythagoras was said to have gone to the cave at Ida and been incubated there for 27 days and had this enlightenment. Epimenides apparently was in the cave for 57 years, take that one with a pinch of salt, right? But he came to Athens and brought cathartic healing to Athens. And Empedocles wrote a famous treatise, Catharmoi, and Plato in Laws starts that whole dialogue setting out to the Idaean cave. So I agree with Geoffrey Lloyd, who says we have good evidence to think of Pythagoras not merely as a religious teacher, but as a shaman. And I think we can think of a lot of our so-called pre-Socratic philosophers as standing in that tradition of cathartic, prophet, healer, shamans, and performers. So here is the lexicon definition of catharsis: cleansing from guilt or defilement, purification, clarification, medical, pruning of trees, winning of a grain. Clearing of land, confusing, right? But not according to Plato, right? In the Sophist, Plato actually uses these multiple definitions. He says, look, we use terms like sifting, straining, winnowing, separating, carding, combing, and shedding. What do they all denote? Well, they're all methods of separation. And I think that's a good way to think about catharsis. We're separating, right? And he says, well, there's two kinds of separation, the worse the better, and like from like. And the first kind, which keeps the better and discards the worse, is what he calls catharsis. It's a good definition, right? And even then there's two types of catharsis, one for the body and one for the soul, right? And then he divides the catharsis for the soul into purging of wickedness, which is a kind of sickness, and perhaps more importantly, the purging of ignorance. And here again, he uses the language of medicine. The soul is sick and can be healed by having what is tainting it cleaned or purified. Again, catharsis. And what I love here, he says, this is achieved by applying a rigorous process of verbal cross-examination so that the ignorance of opinion will be separated from the truth of knowledge. Isn't that the world we're living in right now, right? The ignorance of opinion will be separated. We need catharsis right now more than any other time at all. And here's Heracles linking all those ideas together, who himself is becoming purified in the lesser mysteries by the beautiful river Ilissos, which is now a big road in Athens. And look at what is being held over his head. It's a lichnon, which is used to separate wheat from the chaff, right? And it's literally, he's shrouded, he's going through this cathartic ritual so he can become initiated into the Eleusinian mysteries. Of course, Aristotle made the famous pronouncement, through pity and fear, I prefer Elios to translate as compassion, and other emotions, tragedy achieves catharsis. Or you could translate that as through compassion and fear, tragedy accomplishes the catharsis of such emotions. I'm not going to get into probably the most argued over 2 lines of Greek in all of classics, right? But catharsis, Aristotle never really tells us what catharsis means, because I think to the ancient Greeks, catharsis was a way of life, right? I think many of them were initiated into the Eleusinian mysteries. Many of them understood this idea of going into the cave, having some kind of performative experience, stepping outside of their bodies and being enlightened. But what's really important about my research into cathartic rituals is that they're all collective. They're all about doing it together. They're all about being in front of people, about owning your shit, might we say, right? And of course, the theatre itself was the great place in the 5th century BC Athens where these cathartic rituals become institutionalized into tragedy and comedy. So that's my very kind of whistle-stop tour description of catharsis. But I relate this to the chorality of Greek theatre and the fact that, like you, the audience were gathered there, sharing that experience, supporting that experience. That chorus and those actors on stage were from their tribes. They were from their people. And this is the heart of our program, the Warrior Chorus. It's maybe not so much about the art that we produce, it's about the producing of the art. Coming together as a community, supporting each other, working on these hard texts, thinking about what they mean to us, and that's what we're going to do tonight. Thank you very much. So now you know what catharsis means. It's my great honour to introduce Joel P. Christensen, who's Professor of Classics at the CUNY Graduate Centre, where he also serves as Provost and Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs. Joel has previously taught at UT San Antonio and Brandeis University. His research includes early Greek poetry, myth, and literary theory. With Elton Barker, Joel has published Homer, A Beginner's Mythical Past in 2020. He's also recently published The Many-Minded Man, The Odyssey, Psychology, and the Therapy of Ethic, a book I know very, very well. It's an excellent book you should all read. He is also editor of the Oxford Critical Guide to the Odyssey, coming out at the end of this year, and is working on a book tentatively entitled Why Odysseus, for release next year. And I should mention, Joel is one of our own. This is a return home for Joel. He has completed his PhD upstairs. Was it upstairs or were you across the road at that time? Across the road, right, in the NYU Classics Department. So it's my great welcome and delight to welcome Joel Christensen. Thank you.
Good evening. How are you all doing?
Good evening.
Can I get a little more back? Good evening.
Good evening.
All right. Thank you, Peter, for having me. Matthew Santaracco, who isn't here. I wish you were. Almost 25 years ago, I came to NYU and started my journey here. And so it's a delight to be this remote working. Okay. Book 15, The Odyssey. Odysseus is in disguise, he's in the swineherd's hut, and he says to him, "Let us delight in one another's gruesome pains, while we drink and dine in my home, remembering," this is Eumaeus, sorry, "a man may delight later on in his pains, when he's suffered many and gone through much." I've long been sort of mystified by this statement, and there are a couple issues. One, we don't always associate pleasure with pain, some people do. But the telling of prior sorrows as an avenue to pleasure introduces something of a mystery of what it means to be a person and to establish your identity. Think back for a moment to developing friendships with people. And you get to that awkward time where you start to tell the sad things that happened to you, right? The struggles you went through, what you've experienced in life, because it communicates in a way how you view yourself and your place in the world. The complicated thing about this complicated man at this moment is Odysseus goes on to tell a story that isn't actually true. It's made up of a pack of lies that turn out to have some interesting parallels to the truth of who this man is. I want you to think about this moment and what it means in the arc of the Odyssey. And I want to acknowledge, of course, that it does not end there. This is not even 2/3 of the way through the poem. What I want to do in the time before we get to the important work tonight, which is the reading from the Odyssey, is talk to you a little bit about how the Odyssey itself is a therapeutic work of art that both dramatizes someone's path back to a reintegrated personality and also offers a model for how to recuperate agency in the world. As Peter can tell you, this is not a typical way that people talk about Homer, but I think it's rooted in the function of Homeric epic in the past and the way that the Odyssey continues to appeal to us today. And there are sort of 3 moments in it that I want to stick with you. 1, how the epic talks about agency and what we can do in the world. 2, the issue of learned helplessness and the therapy that the Odyssey offers. And 3, the function of the stories that Odysseus tells in books 9 through 12 of the epic. Now, often overlooked because Telemachus is extremely annoying, is the parallel between Telemachus and Odysseus and someone I'm not going to talk about today, Penelope, at the beginning of the epic. The 3 primary characters in the Odyssey are appearing at first incapable of any type of action. We find Telemachus sitting there, just looking out, hoping his father will come home and fix all of his problems. We find Penelope inside the house, incapable of changing anything around her. And when we first find Odysseus, he's sitting on the side of the seashore, crying every day, and then unwillingly sleeping with the goddess every night. The epic asks us, I'll get back to that, asks us on several occasions to contemplate why these heroes, and everybody in the Odyssey is at some level a hero, why these heroes don't act to save themselves. What we get here is an interest in the theory of mind, how people function in the world, and why and when they don't. Now, one thing I want to remark on from the beginning is that the Odyssey sets us up to think about this problem. All right? The beginning of the Odyssey, for those of you who come to it for the first time after a while, actually tells a story you might not expect. Because it begins by saying, hey, there's this guy, he suffered a lot, and he failed to bring his people home. From the beginning, we're invited to think of Odysseus the failure. We're given a sidestep. We're asked first to say, well, think about the fact that his companions ate the cattle of the sun and died because of their own recklessness. This theme, because of their own recklessness, in Greek, spheteresin, tastaliesin, shows up multiple times in the epic. It marks the actions of the companions. It also marks the actions of the suitors, and it marks the actions of Odysseus. Now, beginning the epic this way, by marking human action as responsible for human suffering, is a separation from the epic and mythical tradition. The Iliad begins by saying, look, the rage of Achilles killed myriad Achaeans, and Dios deteleto boule. Zeus's plan was being completed. Everything at the beginning of the Iliad is framed as part of some divine plan. You could almost read this and think, all the things that happen to me are determined by the gods, so what can I do to change them? Lest we continue an idea like that at the beginning of the Odyssey, the narrator starts out by saying, well, the sailors died because of their own recklessness. And then we don't see Odysseus, right? Instead, we see Zeus looking down on a different story altogether. He's looking down on Aegisthus, who is the cousin of Agamemnon, who shacked up with Clytemnestra while he was gone. And Zeus says, mortals, they're always blaming the gods and saying that evils come from us when they have pain beyond their lot thanks to their own recklessness. The beginning of the Odyssey asks us to consider how we are responsible for our own suffering. And I believe within that also is contained the corollary, which is, can we make our lives better if we're not so dumb? Now, one of the issues of what happens at the beginning of the Odyssey is seeing that there's a pattern between father and son, and that much of what happens with Telemachus sets us up for the story of his father. When I have worked on both of these stories, one of the models I use to think about what's going on with them is the model of learned helplessness. Learned helplessness is a classic theory from psychology that's been shown to be true in many different animals as well as human beings. And the basic idea is if you fail at a task repeatedly, you're less likely to try to do the task again. And even if you do try, you're less effective because you don't believe you can do it. Learned helplessness has been used by sociologists and psychologists to explain everything from poverty to incarceration to early death, right? But the basic psychological phenomenon that sports psychologists will share with you is if you don't believe you can do something, you can't do it, right? What I think we see at the beginning of the Odyssey is a Telemachus who's never been told he can do anything. He has no models except for weirdos who show up to court his mom. He has nobody to show him how to act in the world, and so he sits there waiting for somebody else to solve his problems. If you read the Telemachy carefully, the person who solves his problems is Athena. She shows up, she interrogates him, she says, go and find out news of your father. He does that. He goes on a trip. He becomes a little hero of his own. And by the end of his trip in book 4, he says, my father is dead. I'm going home to fix my problems. This starts a pattern that happens again in the Odyssey. And the pattern creates a hybrid view of determinism, where a character says they can't do something, an experienced character or a god comes in and says, yes, you can. They cooperate. It's unclear what the causal event is, but at the end, human agency is reaffirmed and rewarded. But let's go back to Odysseus. Telemachus and Odysseus and Penelope provide different answers to the problem of how you emerge from helplessness, how you recuperate your agency in the world. And they present different answers for how you become paralyzed, whether it's never learning how to be an agent, whether you are marginalized by gender, whether it's because you have suffered at war. Odysseus' suffering is from repeated, prolonged trauma. Trauma disintegrates your sense of self. Over time, it makes you feel incapable of acting. And through Odysseus' moment here, we are exposed to different ways of coping with it. We've already learned from Telemachus that if you go out and act in the world, and this happens in cognitive behavioral therapy, if you learn how to act in small stakes, you increase your confidence that you can act in bigger ones. That's Telemachus. And it happens as well with Odysseus. Book 5, hold on there. Book 5 is probably the most criminally underread book in the epic because people get to the building of the raft and then they just move on. But what happens in Book 5 is that Odysseus must rebuild himself. I invite you to read the book again and see the creation of the raft as a metaphor for the reassembling of the parts of himself that he needs to go home. But it's not over after that. He almost dies 4 times, and each time he chooses to go on. There's a famous experiment, a little cruel, from the 50s by a man named Kurt Richter. It's the swimming rat experiment. And what it showed is that domesticated rats who have been rescued from drowning before try harder to swim and endure longer than those who have never been rescued. In Book 5, Odysseus has help. He has Calypso, he has Hermes, he has the goddess Leucothea who helps him, and he believes he can act, and then he ends up naked and alone on Scheria, and he has a plan, all right? But that's only part of the story, because we get books 9 through 12 of the Odyssey of Odysseus telling his own tale. As Peter rightly said, and I think he and I may doubt Odysseus' sincerity differently, I think Odysseus sets up the tale. He cries. He wants to tell the tale, and I'll explain in a minute. He's invited to tell his own story, and he tells it, and it's the most famous part of the epic. Every time you hear a summary of the Odyssey, most of the events are from books 9 through 12. It's the most famous events. It's the oldest archaeological evidence of the Odyssey story we have comes from those books. When I read it, though, one of the things that influenced me is thinking about narrative therapy from the perspective of Michael White. And he was a therapist who thought that many of the problems that we have in the world have to do with the way we conceive ourselves within it. It's a problem of seeing ourselves as agents and actors rather than victims. And so in his practice, he has people tell their stories and retell their stories until they can get to a moment where they see themselves differently within it. When I teach the Odyssey, I give the right part of this chart blank to students. I ask them to go through books 9 through 12 and to assign blame for all of the deaths that happened in it. This is inspired by Jonathan Shea's book, Odysseus in America, where he puts Odysseus on court-martial at the end of the book. The spoiler, he's guilty, right? But what I want you to think back on is Odysseus's activity on the island of Calypso. What's he doing every day there crying? What's he thinking about? How many of you have heard of Epic the Musical? All right, look it up, it's pretty phenomenal. There's a song in it called Love in Paradise, in which Odysseus is being tortured by his memories of suffering and the loss of his men. I think that the creator of Epic the Musical had an insight. Odysseus spent 7 years thinking about his own blame, thinking about how he ended up there and trying to reimagine a future. When Michael White would work with people on narrative therapy, he would have them think about moments of their life and go back and rewrite them. What I think we get in book 9 is a composite result of what happened in that time, and Odysseus retelling his tale, thinking back to every moment and observing what he did. The poetic challenges of the Odyssey are tied to this in part, which is figuring out causes and what happens. And Zeus's statement at the beginning of the Odyssey is a guide to this. And what happens in Odysseus' story is important. If you go back and read the story of the Cyclops slowly, you'll get the point that at the center of all of Odysseus' disasters is this story. Of all the episodes, this one is the most famous, the blinding of the Cyclops, and it's the one that Odysseus is allegedly most proud of. But the story our Odyssey tells us is that Odysseus is told 3 times by his men not to pursue the course of action that leads to his fame. First, they tell him it's dangerous and unneeded to visit Polyphemus' cave because they have plenty of goats already. Then once they've arrived and he's in the cave and they've stolen all the stuff, they say, let's get out, right? We can leave. He says, no, I want to stay for a guest gift. Finally, as they're sailing away from the Cyclops, they've gotten away, he's bragging about it, they say, shh. And he says, my name is Odysseus, I'm from Ithaca, and Laertes is my father. Now, this may seem funny, and I put Homer Simpson up here to keep it funny, but if you get to Odysseus' story of the prophecy of Tiresias in book 11, it tells a different version of the tale. And what it says is that Odysseus knows that if his men end up on the island of Helios, they could eat the cattle of the sun. He never warns them not to, first. Second, Tiresias makes it pretty clear that if Odysseus hadn't blinded Polyphemus, he would have gone home right away. If you read the epic carefully, the suitors didn't show up in Ithaca until 3 years before the beginning of our story. Odysseus went to Tiresias in year 12. If Odysseus hadn't blinded Polyphemus, he wouldn't have suffered at sea. The suitors never would have plagued his family, and his son would have never been in danger of disinheritance. Now, we don't have to agree that that's actually what happened in the Odyssey, right? The truth or fiction of Odysseus' story isn't the point. The point of his story is that he has to tell it in a certain way to act. By telling the story in this way, he makes himself not a victim, but an agent. Now, when we go back to Eumaeus, what we find is Odysseus who's the narrative agent supreme. But the story's not over yet, because the rest of the epic's about less instrumental conversations. The first half of the Odyssey is about remaking the self. The second half is about reintegration, the series of reunions with people who tell you the stories you've forgotten, who provide you the opportunity to remember the person you were before. Odysseus is nobody in book 9 because there's no one who recognizes who he was. The Odyssey is therapeutic because it demonstrates that we need other people to help us. Therapy comes from the Greek word therapon, which means sometimes a henchman, but mostly an assistant. Therapy is assistance. Odysseus' story is about survival and recuperation. He must regain control over his story to find himself again. But once home, he must relearn who he was to fully return. His identity comes from the people who remember, from those who recognize the younger man in the scarred veteran. The story of the Odyssey is in part not about how someone makes sense of the world, but how we can reconstruct ourselves so that we can make sense in the world. And that's the journey the epic offers us. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. That was really exciting and has sparked lots in all of us, I'm sure, to talk about. So let me introduce you all to our current day bards. Everybody could stand up and take your places. Great. So let me pass around the circle to just introduce yourselves to the audience.
Luis Morales. William Rios.
Luis Torres de Jesus.
Vanessa Gilliam.
Kent Mosley.
Shaw Hampton.
John Fabian.
Michael Casablanca.
Jackie Casto.
Jose Frias.
Donna Zephyr.
Thank you. So before we begin our journey into the Odyssey, I ask you all to do a little experiment with us. We're going to do our breathing exercises that we do to start our rehearsals, our gatherings, and I'd like you to join us, if you don't mind. I'm even going to take my high heel shoes off and ground. So I would suggest that you just put both feet on the ground. You don't have to take your shoes off. I just need to do it because I can't ground if I don't do that. Great, and just relax your shoulders. Think about sitting up in your chair. So you're not strained, but you're just alert. And your spines are long. And you can close your eyes if you'd like. Place one hand on your abdomen. And what I'm going to do is guide you through some counted breaths. So you're going to inhale for 5 counts. You're going to hold for 3. You're going to exhale for 5. And we're going to repeat 5 times. But I'm going to add 2 seconds to every exhale. Okay? On the 5th round, I'm going to let you do this together as a chorus, right? And really think about inhaling, holding, and exhaling with the partner next around you, with your partners around you. So it's like a wave, right? And you're going to set the scene for us on the shores of Calypso. And you can keep your mouths closed, breathe in and out only through your nose. I know this is a lot, okay? But we'll try to do it together. And don't be afraid to make that noise. I don't know if anybody's done yoga, but it's an Ujjayi breath. This will also help keep the people next to you in time with you, all right? So I'm going to start. So empty out your breath. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold, 1, 2, 3. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold, 1, 2, 3. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold, 1, 2, 3. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold, 1, 2, 3. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Inhale together. Just feel it. Thank you.
Okay, I feel the cool breezes of Calypso's Isle. I'm the narrator, but Joel did such a fantastic job. Joel, did you know we were doing all these things that you just mentioned? Oh, there you go. Good, right? So, wonderful. So, we are going to jump right in. Year 20, Odysseus has been 10 years fighting the Trojan War, 10 years trying to get home, 7 years on the island of Calypso. Calypso, same root as the word apocalypse, apocalypse. A calypse is a shroud, a hiding place, or a grave. And it's almost as if Odysseus is kind of figuratively dead. He's almost like in Elysium, because think about it. He's on a beautiful island. He's surrounded by women. He's having sex with a goddess. He should be absolutely ecstatically happy, right? But he's miserable, as Joel said. He just wants to get home. So we're going to start this first reading where the gods are deciding whether or not to let him go on that journey. Thank you.
The gods sat down for council with the great thunder lord Zeus. Athena was concerned about Odysseus' many troubles, trapped by the nymph Calypso in her house.
Father and all immortal gods, no longer let a scepter king be kind or gentle or pay heed to right and wrong. Let every king be cruel, his acts unjust. Odysseus ruled gently, like a father, but no one even thinks of him now. The wretched man is stranded on an island. Calypso forces him to stay with her. He cannot make his way back to his country. He has no ships, no oars, and no companions to help him sail across the wide back sea. His son has gone for news of his lost father in sandy Pylos and in splendid Sparta. They plot to kill the boy when he returns.
Smiling at her, Lord Zeus, who heaps the clouds, replied.
Oh boy. Adon, what a thing to say. Did you not plan all this yourself? So that Odysseus could come home and take revenge upon the suitors? Now use all your skill. Ensure Telemachus comes safely home. And the suitors fell and sailed away. Dear Hermes, you, you are my messenger. Go tell the goddess our fixed intention, that Odysseus must go back home. He has endured enough. Without a god or a human as his guide, he will drift miserable for 20 years, many days, upon a makeshift raft, and then arrive at fertile Syria. The magical Phaeacian will respect him like a god, and send him in a ship to his dear homeland with gifts of bronze and heaps of gold and clothing, more than he would have brought with him from Troy. If he had come directly from Troy with his share of powder, it is granted for him to see the one he loved beneath his own high roof in his own country.
Hermes heard these words. At once he fastened on his feet the sandals of everlasting gold, with which he flies on breath of air across sea and land. He seized the wand he uses to enchant men's eyes, to sleep or wake as he desires, and flew. The god flashed bright in all his power. He touched Piraea. Then from the sky he plunged into the sea and swooped between the waves, just like a seagull catching fish, wetting its wearing wings in tireless brine. Sir Hermes scudded through the surging swell. Then finally, he reached the distant island, stepped from the indigo water to the shore, and reached the cavern where the goddess lived. There sat Calypso with her braided curls. Beside the hearth, a mighty fire was burning. The scent of citrus and brittle pine suffused the island. Inside, she was singing and weaving with a shuttle made of gold. her voice was beautiful. Around the cave, a luscious forest flourished. Adler, poplar, and scented cypress. It was full of birds. A ripe and luscious vine hung thick with grapes was stretched to coil around her cave. 4 springs spurted with sparkling water as they laced with crisscross currents intertwined together. The meadow softly bloomed with celery and violets. Hermes gazed around in wonder and joy, as sights to please even a god, his heart amazed at all he saw. At last he went inside the cave. Calypso, the splendid goddess, knew the god on sight. The deathless gods all recognized each other.
But Hermes did not find Odysseus, since he was sitting by the shore as usual, sobbing in grief and pain. His heart was breaking. In tears, he stared across the fruitless sea. Divine Calypso told her guest to sit upon glittering chair and said,
Dear friend, Lord Hermes, of the golden wand, why have you come? My heart you don't often visit. What is on your mind? My heart inclines to help you if I can, if it's fated. For now, come, and let me make you welcome.
At that, the goddess led him to a table heaped with ambrosia, and she mixed a drink, red nectar. So mercurial Hermes drank and ate till he was satisfied. And then the diplomat explained why he had come.
You are a goddess, and I am a god. And yet you ask me why I come? Well, I will tell you. Zeus ordered me to come, and I really didn't want to come. Because who would desire to cross such an expanse of endless salty sea? No human town is near here where gods get fine sacrifices. Still, none can sway or check the will of Zeus. He says the most unhappy man alive is living here. He's a warrior from those who fought the town of Priam for 9 years. And in the 10th, they sacked it and sailed home. But on the journey back, they wronged Athena. She roused the wind and surging sea against him, and all his brave companions. Every one of them were destroyed, while he himself was blown here by the waves. You know, Zeus orders you to send him on his way at once, since it is not his destiny to die here far away from those he loves. It is his fate to see his family and come back home to his own native land.
You cruel, jealous gods. You bear a grudge whenever a goddess takes a man to sleep with as a lover in her bed. Like when the gods who live at ease were angry with rosy-fingered Dawn took up with Orion. And from her golden throne, cast Artemis, attacked and killed him with her gentle arrows. Demetra, with her cornrows in her hair, indulged her own desire, and she made love with Jason in triple furrowed fields, till Zeus found out, hurled flashing flames, and killed him. So now, you male gods are upset with me for living with a man I saved. Zeus pinned his ships, and with a flash of lightning, smashed it to pieces, and all his friends were killed out there on the wine dark sea. This man alone clutched the keel, was swept by wind and wave, and came here to my home. I cared for him. I loved him, and I vowed to set him free from time and death forever. Still, I know no other God can change the will of Zeus, so let him go, if that is Zeus's order, across the barren sea. So, I will not give an escort for this trip across the water. I have no ships, I have no rowers, but I will share what I know with him and gladly give him useful advice so he can safely reach his home.
Thank you, guys. So, the scene is set. Odysseus gets to build the raft that Joel told us about and sets out on the sea, but Poseidon gets wind of it. Poseidon is not about to let Odysseus get home. And in this next scene, we hear about that voyage across the sea with the wrath of Poseidon.
Returning from the Ethiopians and pausing on Mount Selima, Poseidon, master of earthquakes, saw the distant raft. Enraged, he shook his head and told himself,
This is outrageous. So it seems the gods have changed their plans about Odysseus while I was absent. He has almost reached Phaeacia, where it is his destiny to flee the rope of pain that binds him now. But I will goad him to more misery till he's sick of it.
He gathered up the clouds and seized his trident and stirred round the sea and roused the gusts of wind, the gusts of every wind, and covered earth and sea with fog. Night stretched from the heaven. Eurus, Notus, blasting Zephyr and Boreas, the childs of sky, all fell and rolled a mighty wave. Odysseus grew weak at the knees. He cried out in despair.
More pain? How will it end? I am afraid the goddess spoke the truth, that I will have a sea of sufferings before I reach my homeland. It is coming true. Zeus whirls the air. Look at those clouds. He agitates the waves, and winds attack from all directions. I could hold on to one thing, certain death. Those Greeks were lucky 3 and 4 times over, who died upon the plain of Troy to help the sons of Atreus. I wish I had died the same day the mass of Trojans hurled their bronze-tipped spears at me around the corpse of Peleus' son. I would have had a funeral, an honor from the Greeks, but now I have to die this cruel death.
A wave crashed onto him and overturned the raft, and he fell out. The rudder slipped out of his hands. The winds blew all directions, and one enormous gust snapped the mast. The sail and yardarm drifted out to sea. Then, for a long time rushing, crashing waves kept him submerged. He could not reach the surface. The clothes Calypso gave him weighed him down. At last, he rose and spat the sour salt water out of his mouth. It gushed forth as a torrent.
Despite his pain and weakness, he remembered his raft and lounged to get to it through the waves. He climbed on top of it and clung to life. The great waves carried it this way and that, as when the thistles, clumping close together, are carried across the prairie by the north wind. So these winds swept the raft across the sea. The south wind hurls it, then the north wind grabs it. The east wind yields and lets the west wind drive it.
But Stephen softly, I know, the goddess, Cadmus child once human voice, now honored with the gods in salty depths, noticed that he was suffering and lost. With pity like a gull with wings outstretched, she rose up from the sea, sat on the raft, and said,
Poor man, why does enraged Poseidon create an odyssey of pain for you? But his hostility will not destroy you. You seem intelligent. Do as I say. Strip off your clothes and leave the raft behind for the winds to take away. With just your arms, swim to Phaeacia. Fate decrees that there you will survive. Here, take my scarf and tie it under your chest. With this immortal veil, you need not be afraid of death or danger. But when you reach dry earth, untie the scarf and throw it out to sea, away from land, and turn away.
With that, the goddess gave it and plunged back down inside the surging sea, just like a gull. The hero who had suffered so much danger was troubled and confused. He asked himself,
Some deity has said to leave the raft, but what if gods are weaving tricks again? I will not trust her yet. With my own eyes, I saw the land she said I should escape to. And if it is far away, I will do this. As long as these wood timbers hold together, I will hang on. However hard it is, but when the waves have smashed my raft to pieces, then I will have no choice, and I will swim.
While he was thinking this, the Lord of earthquakes, Poseidon, roused a huge and dreadful wave that arched above his head. He hurled it at him. And when a forced wind ruffles up, as when a fierce wind ruffles up a heap of dry wheat chaff, it scatters it here and there. So were the raft's long timbers flung apart. He climbed astride a plank and rode along as if on horseback. He took off the clothes Calypso gave him, and he tied the scarf around his chest and dove into the sea, spreading his arms to swim. The Lord of earthquakes saw him and nodded, muttering,
At last you are in pain. Go drift across the sea till you meet people blessed by the Zeus, the Sky Lord. But even then, I think you will not lack for suffering.
Athena, child of Zeus, devised the plan. She blocked the path of all the other winds and told them to cease and made them go to sleep, but roused swift Boreas and smoothed the waves in front of him so that Odysseus could reach Phaeacia and escape death.
Thank you. So Odysseus sees the island of Share. It's very rocky, and he can find no way to get ashore until, I showed you those two words connected with catharsis that Aristotle uses, eleos and phobos. This is a moment of abject phobos, fear, for Odysseus. But that word eleos happens twice in quick succession in this book. He sees the mouth of a river, and he prays to the river god, and he asks the river god to have compassion with him. Eleos is a word that implies that you expect an action back, right? And the river god allows him to cross, and he comes up the river, but he's bedraggled, he's covered in barnacles, he's like a sea monster. He goes to sleep, and he's woken by the sounds of girls playing ball, and of course it's Nausicaa, the princess of the local city, who's come out to perform a cathartic act. She's washing all the clothing of the palace. He bounces out of his hiding place. The girls run away, except Nausicaa, who stands her ground. And then he himself cleanses himself, washes himself, is dressed in the clothing of that community, and taken in to the house of Queen Arete and King Alcinous. And it's interesting that it's Queen Arete who's mentioned first, and he's told to appeal to her first. And he's told to go up to her and supplicate and grab her knees And she says a very interesting thing to him, which she says, "Who are you and where you are from?" And that particular phrase in Greek is very similar to what we find in these Orphic gold tablets that are buried with people on their own journey to the underworld, where they're asked by Persephone, "Who are you and where you are from?" They have the answer in the gold tablets. If you want to know the answer, you have to get initiated into the Orphic mysteries. But they have the answer. Odysseus doesn't give the answer. He doesn't say who he is. He does say where he's from, right? But not Ithaca. He says that he's been blasted here from the Isle of Calypso. So here is Odysseus in disguise, taken in by the Phaeacians, and we reach that point that we talked about earlier, and we're going to see in this scene where he hears the song of Demodocus.
You are wonderful, Demodocus. I praise you more than anyone, Apollo or else the Muse. The child of Zeus has taught you. You tell so accurately what the Greeks achieved and what they suffered there at Troy, as if you had been there or heard about it from somebody who was. So sing the story about the wooden horse which Epius built with Athena's help. Odysseus dragged it inside the citadel, filled it up with men to sack the town. If you can tell that as it happened, I will say that you are truly blessed with inspiration.
The Greeks set fire to the camp and sailed away. Meanwhile, Odysseus brought on a gang of men into the heart of Troy inside the horse. The Trojans pulled the thing up to the summit and sat around discussing what to do. Someone said, "We ought to strike the wood with swords." Others said, "Drag it higher up and hurl it down from the rocks." But some said they should leave it and pacify the gods. So it would be. The town was doomed to ruin when it took that horse, chock full of fighters bringing death to Trojans. Odysseus dragged it inside and to the citadel, filled up with men to sack the town. Oh, how the Achaeans poured from the horse in ambush from the hollow and sacked the city. How they scattered about, destroying every neighborhood. Like Ares, Odysseus with Menelaus rushed to find Deiphobus' house, and there he won. At last! At last. Through dreadful violence.
Odysseus was melting into tears. His cheeks were wet with weeping, as a woman weeps, as she falls to wrap her arms around her husband, fallen, fighting for his home and children. She is watching as he gasps and dies. She shrieks a clear, high wail, collapsing upon his corpse. The men are right behind. They hit her shoulders with their spears and lead her to slavery, hard labor, and the life of pain. Her face is marked with her despair.
In that same desperate way, Odysseus was crying. No one noticed his eyes were wet with tears except Alcinous, who sat right next to him and heard his sobs.
Throughout this heavenly song, since dinner time, our guest has been in pain. Grieving, a heavy burden weighs his heart.
Stranger, now answer all my questions clearly. Not with evasion, frankness would be best. What did your parents name you? with what name are you known to your people? Surely no one in the world is nameless, poor or noble, since parents give names to every child at birth. And also, tell me of your country, your people, and your city, so our ships, steered by their own good sense, may take you there. But come now, tell me about your wanderings. Describe the places, the people, and the cities you've seen. Which ones were wild and cruel, unwelcoming? And which were kind to visitors, respecting the gods? And please, explain why you were crying, sobbing your heart out when you heard him sing what happened to the Greeks at Troy. The gods devised a measure out of devastation to make a song for those in time to come. Did you lose someone at Troy? A man from your wife's family? Perhaps her father or brother? Ties of marriage are closest after the bond of blood. Or else perhaps you lost the friend who knew you best of all. A friend can be as close as any brother.
Wily Odysseus, Odysseus, the Lord of Lies, answers.
My lord, Alcinous, great king, it's a splendid thing to hear a poet as talented as this. His voice is godlike. I think there can be no greater pleasure than when the whole community enjoys a banquet as we sit inside the house and listen to the singer, and the tables are heaped with bread and meat. To me, this seems ideal, a thing of beauty. Now, something prompted you to ask me my own sad story. I will tell you, though the memory increases my despair. Where shall I start? Where can I end? The gods have given me much to cry about. First, I will tell my name, so we will be acquainted. And if I survive, you can be my guest one day in my distant home. I am Odysseus, Laertes' son, known for my many clever tricks and lies.
Thank you. So now Odysseus can finally tell his story, and over one amazing night, he tells the famous parts of the Odyssey. He sort of gives a breakdown of all the scenes we know and love so well. And it's an amazing night, and at the end of the story, the Phaeacians are completely enthralled and double their resolve to take him home. We're going to just do briefly one of those stories, the one that Joel mentioned, a famous one, of the Cyclops. And we join the story where the crew has landed and Odysseus has decided to go and investigate this cave with cheese. He brings wine with him. I suppose it's one of the world's first wine and cheese parties, but it goes pretty wrong. But we pick up the story with the crew in the cave. At that moment, Joe talked about really trying to get their commander to listen to them. And you can listen to yourself whether you think he makes good strategic decisions at this point, but also how he gets out of this situation. Thank you.
We soon were at the cave, but did not find the Cyclops. He was pasturing his flocks. We went inside and looked at everything.
We saw his crates weighed down with cheese and pens crammed full of lambs, separated by age.
Let us grab some cheese and quickly drive the kids and the lambs out of the pens and down to our swift ships and sail across the salty water.
That would have been a better choice. But I refused. I hoped to see him and find out if he would give us gifts. In fact, he brought no joy to my companions.
Then we lit a fire and made a sacrifice and ate some cheese and sat to wait inside the cave until he brought his flocks back home.
He came at dinner time and brought a load of wood to make a fire. He hurled it noisily into the cave. We were afraid and cowered towards the back. He lifted up the heavy stone and set it to block the entrance of the cave.
It was a rock so huge and massive, 22 strong carts could not have dragged it from the threshold. He sat and in all order milked his ewes and she-goats. Then he set the lambs to suck beside each other, beside their bleeding mother. When he had carefully performed his chores, he lit a fire, then looked around and saw us.
Strangers, what are you doing in my cave? Huh? Where do you come from across safety waters? Water, deep waters? Are you on business? Huh? Or roaming around without a goal? Like pirates who risk their life at sea to bring disaster to other people.
So he spoke, his voice so deep and booming, and his giant size made our hearts sink in terror.
I answered, we are Greeks, come here from Troy. The winds have swept us off in all directions, across the vast expanse of sea. Off course from our planned route back home. Zeus willed it so. We are proud to be the men of Agamemnon, the son of Atreus, whose fame is greatest under the sky for sacking that vast city and killing many people. Now we beg you, here at your knees, to grant a gift, as is the norm for hosts and guests. Please, sir, my lord, respect the gods. We are your suppliants, and Zeus is on our side, since he takes care of visitors, guests, and those in need.
Well, foreigner, you are a fool. Or from some very distant country. You order me to fear the gods? My people think nothing of that Zeus with big scepter or any god. Our strength more than theirs. If I spare you or spare your friends, it will not be out of fear of themselves. I do the bidding of my own heart. But you are going far in that fine ship of yours, or somewhere near?
He spoke to test me. But I saw right through him. I know how these things work. I answered him deceitfully. Poseidon, the earth shaker, shipwrecked me at the far end of your island. He pushed us in, wind dashed us on the rocks. We barely managed to survive. But he made no reply and showed no mercy. Leaning up high, don't you know he reached his hand towards my men and he seized two and knocked them hard against the ground like puppies. And the floor was wet with brains. He ripped them limb by limb to make his meal. Then he ate them like a lion on the mountains.
Oh, yeah.
Devouring flesh, entrails, and marrow bones, and leaving nothing. Watching the disaster, we wept and lifted up our hands in prayer to Zeus. We felt so helpless When the Cyclops had filled his massive belly with his meal of human meat and unmilked mixed milk, he lay stretched out among the flocks. Ooh. Then thinking like a military man, I thought I should get my sword, go to him,
Come.
and thrust right through his torso, feeling his liver.
Now that would have doomed us all.
On second thought, I realized we were too weak to move the mighty stone he set in the high doorway. So we stayed there in misery till dawn.
Early the dawn appeared, pink fingers blooming, and then he lit his fire and milked his ewes in turn, and set a lamb by everyone.
When he had diligently done his chores, he grabbed 2 men and made a meal of them.
Oh, yeah, we have breakfast.
After he ate, he drove his fat flock out. He rolled the boulder out and back with ease, as one would set the lid upon a quiver. Then whistling merrily, the Cyclops drove his fat flocks to the mountain.
I was left scheming to take revenge on him and hurt him and gain the glory if Athena let me. I made my plan. Beside the pen stood a great big club, green olive wood, which he had cut to dry to be his walking stick. It was so massive that it looked to us like a ship's mast, a 20-oared black freighter that sails across the vast sea full of cargo. Here, Cyclops, you have eaten human meat. Now drink some wine. Sample the merchandise our ships contains. I brought it as a holy offering so you might pity me and send me home. But you are in a cruel rage beyond what anyone could bear. Do you expect more guests when you have treated us so rudely? He took and drank the sweet, delicious wine. He loved it. And he demanded more.
Oh, yeah. Another? And now tell me your name, so I can give you a present as my guest, one you will like. My people do have wine. Great clusters grow from our rich earth, fed well by rain from Zeus. But this nectar, God food.
So I gave him another cup of wine.
Oh, boy. Woo, this.
And then 2 more. He drank them all unwisely. With the wine gone to his head.
Oui.
I told him, all politeness, Cyclops, you ask my name. I will reveal it. Then you must give the gift you promised me of hospitality. My name? My name is No Man. My family and friends call me No Man. He answered with no pity in his heart.
Well, I will eat no man last. First, I will eat the other man. That is my gift to you. Oh, it's gonna be tripping.
Then he collapsed.
Boom.
Fell on his back and lay there, his massive neck askew. All-conquering sleep took him in drunken heaviness. He spewed wine from his throat and chunks of human flesh. And then I drove the spear into the embers to heat it up and told my men, be brave. I wanted none of them to shrink in fear. The fire soon seized the olive spear. Green though it was, and terribly it glowed. I quickly snatched it from the fire. My crew stood firm. Some God was really breathing courage in us. They took the olive spear, its tip all sharp, and shoved it in his eye.
What the hell?
I leaned on top of it.
What the hell?
And when a man, as when a man drills wood for shipbuilding. Below, the workers spin the drill with straps stretched out from either end. So round and round it goes. And so we whirled, and the fire-sharp weapon in his eye, his blood poured out around the stake. And blazing fire sizzled his lids and brows and fried its roots. And so did his eyeball crackle in the spear. Horribly. Then he howled. The rocks resounded, and we shrank back in fear. He tugged the spear out of his eye, all soaked with gushing blood. Desperately, with both hands, he hurled it from him and shouted to the cyclopes who live in the caves high up on the windy hills. They heard and came from every side and stood near to the cave and called out,
Polyphemus, what is the matter?
Friends.
Are you badly hurt?
Friends. Come on, friends.
Great Zeus has made you sick.
No, friends. No man is killing me, that is his name. No man is killing me. No man.
Why are you screaming through the holy night and keeping us awake?
It's no man is trying to kill me.
Is someone stealing your herds?
No, friend, I'm telling you, no man is his name.
Or trying to kill you?
I told you that no man is killing me.
By some trick or force?
No man is killing me by tricks. No man is killing no force.
If no one hurts you, you are all alone.
Hey.
1 page 5.
Thank you.
And, oh, Lord. Lost.
But of course, Odysseus has to get onto the prow of his ship and yell out. Joel told us, my name is Odysseus. I live at 44 Ithaca Road, www.ithaca.com. Right, so, and his son, the Cyclops, calls out a curse down on Odysseus, and it all just goes horribly wrong. So, our final short scene tonight, to bring this to a close, is Odysseus gets to travel to the underworld, although I don't think he actually goes to the underworld. I think the underworld comes to him. He sails to the edge of the underworld. He performs this very ancient pit ritual. He digs a pit. He sacrifices 2 animals. Their blood goes into the pit. And we have images of this, of these spirits raising from the pit. And he's supposed to give the blood to Tiresias. And Tiresias, as he's been told by Circe, will give him the prophecy, the information he needs to get home. But actually, there's a tragic moment in this incredible scene in the underworld where he sees his mother, and he doesn't know his mother's dead. And he, first of all, can't give her the blood and speak to her. He actually has to have the discipline to wait and give it to Tiresias. But after Tiresias delivers his prophecy, he actually does get to speak to his mother. And this is the scene that we're going to close with tonight.
My child, how did you come here through the darkness while you are still alive? This place is hard for living men to see. There are great rivers and dreadful gulfs, including the great ocean, which one can cross on foot. One needs a ship. Have you come wandering here so far from Troy with ship and crew? Have you not yet arrived in Ithaca, nor seen your wife at home?
Mother, I was forced to come to Hades to consult the prophet spirit Theban Tiresias. I have not yet come near to Greece, nor reached my home country. I have been lost and wretchedly unhappy since I first followed mighty Agamemnon to Troy, the land of horses, to make war upon the people there. But tell me, how was sad death brought upon you? By long illness? Or did the archer Artemis destroy you with gentle arrows? Tell me too about my father and son that I left behind. Are they still honored as kings? Or has another taken over since I will not return? And tell me what my wife is thinking and her plans. Does she stay with our son and focus on his care? Or has the best of the Archaeans married her?
She stays firm. Her heart is strong. She is still in your house, and all her nights are passed in misery and her days in tears. But no one has usurped your throne. Telemachus still tends the whole estate unharmed and feasts in style as Lord should do, and is always called and acts to council meetings. Your father, he stays out in the countryside. He will not come to town. He does not sleep on a real bed with blankets and fresh sheets. In winter, he sleeps inside by the fire, just lying in ashes with the slaves, his clothes in rags. In summer and at harvest, the piles of fallen leaves are beds for him. He lies there grieving, full of sorrow, longing for your return. His old age is not easy, and that is why I met my fate and died. The goddess did not shoot me in my home, aiming with gentle arrows, nor did sickness suck all the strength out from my limbs with long and cruel wasting. No, it was missing you, Odysseus, my sunshine, your sharp mind, your kind heart that took sweet life from me.
Then in my heart, I wanted to embrace the spirit of my mother. She was dead, and I did not know how. 3 times I tried longing to touch her, but 3 times her ghost flew from my arms like shadows or like dreams. Sharp pain pierced deeper in me as I cried, "No, mother, why do you not stay for me and let me hold you, even here in Hades? Let us wrap loving arms around each other and find a frigid comfort in shared tears." But is this really you, or has the queen sent me a phantom to increase my grief?
Oh, my child, you are the most unlucky man alive. Persephone is not deceiving you. This is the rule for mortals when we die. Our muscles cease to hold the flesh and skeleton together. As soon as life departs from our white bones, the force of blazing fire destroys the corpse. The spirit flies away and soon is gone, just like a dream. Now hurry to the light. Remember all these things so you may tell your wife in times to come.
Thank you so much. That was really incredible. So thank you. And I want to just start with our talkback section of this. And I want to start with you all. So fresh off your second performance, the first one felt, it was a more comfortable situation, but you're in a new place. And does anybody want to say anything to this experience, what it feels like right now?
No, I'll just jump in at one time.
I was going to say, good job, everybody. It feels good. I was really nervous coming in, but seeing how it all unfolded, we were zipping and zapping, and it felt good. So thank y'all.
Great.
I thought it was a great experience. This was something that new for us, for the veterans that I work with. So this is, we took a chance, and I think everybody embraced it and accepted it and enjoyed it. This is something different for me too, and this is a once-in-a-lifetime experience to be down here in front of all of you, and I know I'm gonna really appreciate it when I leave here. It's gonna stay with me. So thank you for coming, and thank you for making all this possible. Thank you, Desiree, too.
Thank you, William, for helping facilitate all of this, too, at the VA. Before I ask the next question, I do want to thank Emily Wilson, who gave us permission for her translation. It was really an amazing gift, I think, to us. We all really enjoyed her translation and talked a lot about the differences and how it felt really, accessible to us. So we really enjoyed that, and I just really wanted to do a shout out to her for that. Great. So, Peter, do you have any questions you want to ask? We're kind of split the house here, right?
Yeah.
So,
and we have Joel here too, because we didn't have time for questions for him.
Yes.
So I just wanted to ask you, and you might want to pass Joel your mic right now. You're impressed, Joel, watching it, listening to it. You know the text really well, right? But I guess every time you see it or hear it, do you find new things? Are there things that pop out? Is there anything that kind of resonated that maybe differently with you? Put you on the spot now.
So I've never actually heard the passages from Book 5 read aloud. And one of the things, when I talk about it, I focus too much on the narrative and Odysseus. So the performance of Leucothea today really hit home for me. Because that moment, it's not just that Calypso and Hermes are there, but while he's drowning, she intervenes, right? And it's a moment that's not at all needed otherwise, right? It's really weird because she's allegedly from one of the Cadmeids who got turned into a nymph, and she just gives him a life preserver.
This is Eno, right?
Yeah. And so that's just, it's something that, it happens so fast in the narrative, and there are so many other things going around, but it shows that every moment in the sequence matters.
Thank you. And I'd like to ask a question of our veterans. So Joel talked about kind of Odysseus as a leader. Now, all of you have served in the military, so you've all got experiences of good leaders and bad leaders. And I wonder if there were like moments in the work that you did that kind of resonated with you in terms of issues of leadership and what you thought about Odysseus, or if there were anything that you'd like to kind of speak on with that. Lewis.
Well, my part as a Cyclops, the crew told him not to go in the cave, and he hard-headed. He went in there anyway. So it's just as when you have a leader and you have your crew and you tell them, like you enlist the person and tell, we consider this other route, this other, mission, just because he's the leader, he doesn't want to follow. Mm-hmm. And he put the whole squad in danger. Mm-hmm. And he loses everybody up. Mm-hmm. And instead of becoming a hero, he just became like a nobody. He lost everybody. Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to pick up on your mention of, the goddess who pops out of nowhere when Odysseus is drowning, because that was a very impactful moment. And I remember that day where we finished that chapter, and everybody just had like a collective wow at the end. And if anybody remembers that moment, I know, Vanessa, you had something.
I did. I remember that that you can't accomplish your mission without the help of others. It's a collective effort, and you also have to be accepting to accept the help from others. Else sometimes you can't complete the mission, and it's a blessing in disguise, or, you know, when somebody comes in and is willing to give you instructions to help you go to the next phase.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
We want to see if there's any questions from the audience, or any resonances or things that you heard or questions that you'd like to ask. Yeah.
An excellent job by everybody involved, including the actors and actresses, of course, but the organization as well. I'm wondering from the participants how cathartic you found this, and from the organization, what can be done if it were cathartic to use this in other areas with other veterans and help more people?
Yeah, that's a great question. What I always find the most valuable in doing this is the process of creating this with the other veterans. When we go through the text, we're going through the story, we're talking about things that kind of resonate with us, and inevitably stories from our service, from our past kind of come up through this. So when we leave our rehearsal together and we go home and we're looking at the text, I don't know about you guys, but you know, I'm thinking about those things that we talked about and kind of processing them. And there's a real power to speaking the words aloud too, right? When you hear yourself say them, and then when they're laced with that kind of meaning, it really just brings this, this vulnerability out, which is frightening and terrifying to be up here. But, you know, veterans, I think we all kind of naturally, like, we kind of know the program, right? Like, we're thrown into situations all the time. We have no idea what's going on. We follow the leader. We're scared. But like Vanessa said, you have team. You have everybody supporting everybody, and you just know. You just know that that person is trained. You know that they know what to do. And so it's the same when we get up here, right? I don't know if you guys noticed, but we kind of lost our way in one of those scenes. But we helped each other, and we picked it up, and we went right through to the end. And then when you get to the end, there's kind of, it's like runner's high if you're a runner. You know, there's like this little bit of catharsis that you kind of feel, this relief, and then you're like, I made it. I can do it. Here I am. I've done it.
Yep.
I think also, like Odysseus, we're sent on missions, and it's like a journey. You want to get home, you know, and sometimes we are on these 13-month missions, 24-month missions, and you're away from your family and your friends and things that you are accustomed to. And just like Odysseus, you know, you're trying to find your way back. And in the end, we hope that Odysseus finds his way back like he does, and we also want to find our way back home to our friends and families and everything that we are familiar with.
You know, I want to add something to what Vanessa just said. It's about the Odyssey. It's just about way back home. It's just like you here in the States, you get deployed. You know where you're going, what you're going to find. But then you find your way back home, that journey back. You know, it's what the Odyssey is all about, finding your way back home. You right here, right now, you just don't know how many people are already deployed. You know, they bring them home, whatever the case might be. The body might be here, they might not be, they might still be out there. But it's a journey. It's just like being deployed out of the United States to a different country. And then on your way back, you never know if you're going to come back. You never know how you're going to come back. And you never know how you're going to get to your family or your friends.
And that was some of the stories that we shared during this process. You know, sharing our experiences and comparing it to Odysseus. And some of us were vulnerable, and, you know, we shared some emotions, some raw emotions. It was very therapeutic, I thought, going through the process with the other veterans. And I think that was a very healing process through this whole journey with Odysseus. And we weren't just reading the chapters and trying to put something together. It all started with the catharsis and learning about each other and healing and comparing ourselves and our experiences and getting something out of it. I think everybody got something out of the book. And I guess I'm relating to everybody who shared their part of it. So.
Catharsis, what an amazing word. We've been rehearsing this for a while, and it's a very grounding experience to be with. First of all, to be out of your comfort zone, like you must be. None of us are really professionals, and putting it together, especially for today, was an amazing experience for me because you like a mission. You want to kind of get to the end and you want to get home. Maybe is a better metaphor. But today, in front of all of you, and I felt a different camaraderie with my veteran friends here. And I felt support like I hadn't felt in other rehearsals. And it wasn't about getting to the end. I was really feeling secure and enjoying myself. I saw parts of my veteran sisters and brothers here that I hadn't seen in other rehearsals.
I think that's a beautiful statement, and it makes me think that sometimes we think of theatre as aesthetics, right? We think of, and that's great. We run a theatre company, we do that, right? Lighting, sound, directorial choices. But sometimes we forget it's about community, and it's about sharing words with each other. And that's like a really powerful thing, and you just articulated that really beautifully. And I think that's probably the kind of heart of the program, is to just kind of get it back out there and then share it with you guys. And maybe that's the catharsis, right? Is that sense of community coming together and feeling those emotions.
Yeah, I think, oh, sorry, go ahead, John.
I think it was interesting that a lot of us didn't even know each other when we started this process. Some of us knew each other. We'd met each other at the VA, casually, but we didn't know anything about each other. And this experience gave me a wonderful feeling of trust that seemed to have been missing, in the experience of life. We're getting to a point now where we're lacking in trust. And this experience really allowed me to trust other human beings that I didn't know, and in a way that you do when you're out there at bivouac or in some situation where you're placed in by the military and you're forced to come together and make it happen. And you may not even get along with these people. You still come together and do it, but I think it was pretty wonderful that we all got along and loved this experience and came back to it again after we'd finished it before and got more from it each time. So it has really been a cathartic experience.
I think for me, I look at Odysseus and the challenges that he faced in life. And for myself, going back, we all have hope. And Odysseus had hope that he would get home. Okay, in my life, I had hope that certain conditions would change. I would see that light at the end of the tunnel, as Odysseus did. And it was another train coming. But as I began to get a new perspective, that light became the light of hope, of new beginnings. And that's similar to what Odysseus is looking for and what he's striving for, to get home to. You just don't give up. No matter how many and how much you might go through in life, press on. Don't give up. Because there's a blessing in the pressing. And that's all I got.
Amen.
Any other audience questions? Yeah.
Thank you so much. This was so beautiful. I'm a high school English teacher, and I just finished teaching book 18 today. And my students are less interested in the story after Odysseus reaches Ithaca, because it's sort of like, oh, he got home. Wait, there's 12 more books to read. And so I would love to hear any thoughts about that back half, because your performances were so amazing, but they're from that front half where he's still not there. And I wondered whether that was something, like that was a choice that was, like how did you choose which scenes? And, some of the big tearjerkers, like him and his mom, like talk about when he meets his dog, right? That's also a tearjerker, but that's at home. So I guess just, any thoughts about when he gets back?
All right, they're all looking at me because they're like, that's all on you, girl. All right, so full disclosure, our discussions were so rich, we didn't really get past book 12. We talked a lot about what happens and the rest of it, but we really didn't want to skip ahead. We found that, like, every time we tried to do that, and we said, oh, read, 3 chapters by the time we get back next week, we were like, no, let's just do it together, because there's something about when we read it together, all in one, as one book, we just heard so much more, and we understood so much more, and it was shared together, and so it just took on a life of its own, and then we spent like an hour and a half talking about how and why it was so profound. So the plan is that in the spring, funding provided, we can keep going and do the rest. The second half.
To be continued.
To be continued. What was that?
I did want to say to your question, though, I really love that question. When you read the Odyssey, it's not really a story about a physical journey, really, right? It's Odysseus is on his own journey, and he's trying to figure out the answer to the question, who are you? And he doesn't even really seem to know at that point who he is, right? He just went through 9 years of war, has been stranded in this, like, in-between life and death situation with Calypso on her island for years and years and years, right? He's kind of lost his sense of, like, meaning and who he is and what he's around for. So in each book, in each chapter, he's, like, getting a little bit closer, right? And you're like, you want to cheer for him, and then he says stupid stuff, and he makes stupid decisions, and you're like, what are you doing? In the back half of the story, for those of you who don't know, he goes back, he goes home, and he's in disguise. So he's not even like there as himself. And I think that I personally think it's written that way because the author's saying, like, he's still not 100% there, right? He has to go through like a few more things before he can get there, and painful things, where he really has to deal with some hard truths and do some really violent acts. And then there's like kind of a catharsis at the end, right? Or maybe not. We don't really know, right? When we get to the end, it's kind of an open question. It's a cliffhanger. But that's not the point, I don't think. I think the point is the journey. And as we've gone through and we've talked about all these books and we've talked about different parts of it, like we've talked about, they resonate with us because we've all been through these journeys in our own different ways. So, yeah, I'm excited to do the rest of the book.
Of course, Michael read ahead.
Yeah. I'm the extra credit kid, sorry.
I want to ask Joel, actually, about healing and Odyssey's therapy, because Joel's written it very eloquently on this. But actually, Joel, in antiquity, do you think this was also maybe a healing performance?
Absolutely. So one of the things I'd love to hear all of you talk about more is what the experience is of repeatedly going through the story, right? Because what we miss out, and so to go back to the question from over there and the entire plan, what we too often miss out on is the communal experience of repeatedly going through the same story, right? Of hearing episodes, of occasionally hearing the same story, and also being invited through life to return to the story again and again, right? When you're young, you're Telemachus. When you're old, you're Odysseus. Someday you might get to be Laertes. And so that's one of the things that I would love to hear more from you guys is how does the narrative change with you each time you dip into it? And how does it change you in turn?
Yes, who's going to grab?
Yeah, go ahead. No, go.
For me, because I actually have a background in social work and community mental health and helping people, like specifically military couples, deal with the transition of coming from the military to now dealing with civilian life and like being on the road and separated to now being together, especially during COVID. That was like a really big thing. And I facilitated support groups and things like that where we go over the same thing because it's all about how do you handle your transitions. And everybody was like, this is a conflict resolution course and everything is about communication. So I would just tell them, like, break down the word resolve. You have to resolve the same problem over and over and over again. And I tell them to, like, think of Pac-Man. It was like the same 4 goals, same 4 directions, just different levels. So you have to learn how to just regulate yourself and know who's on your team and not turn against your teammate. And I think working with all these people here, going back to the trust thing, I had trust issues with men in the military, but being in this specific setting and having Desiree especially say, you know, how do you feel about this character saying this? And everybody was able to give their perspective. It helped me calm down and really embody the character as well as bring myself and my experiences into it. And that's something I know how to do, like professionally and like intellectually, but again, being here, doing it with these people at this time, it felt so different.
Great. Any more other questions?
Over here, yeah.
Hi, that was a great performance. My question is kind of going back to the scene you guys performed from Book 11, thinking about Odysseus not being able to see his mother right away. He has to perform this task. And I was just wondering if for any of you, you felt some feelings of resonance or relatability that Odysseus has to be a man on a mission before he can be a son. So he has to put aside his personal emotions in that moment and complete his task before he can let himself like think about his personal life.
Wow.
I think Odysseus, prior to going to see his mom, he didn't know a lot of things until he got to Hades, I believe. I think he didn't know about one of his soldiers who fell and broke his neck. He didn't know about, he knew about his mother, but I guess she told him about his son. He received more information about his dad. So, yeah, he had to prepare himself before he, went to see his mom because he didn't know what to expect. He just took instructions from Telemachus on how to proceed once he got to Hades and met his mother sitting at the fountain. Circe.
That one.
So we pretty much come to 9 o'clock, and Desiree, unless there's anything else you want to raise or bring up, we should probably bring this to a close.
No, I just want to thank you all again for coming. I do have one question. What was that like to breathe together with this many people in a group? Does anybody want to clue me in? Because I've never done that before. Was it helpful? Did it shift you in any way?
You got a thumbs up.
I got a thumbs up. Does anybody want to say anything?
I gotta go to the bathroom.
Great job, everyone. I just want to say, I think that it kind of settled the whole group in a way, and I've never done that before watching a performance of any kind, except in an acting class. But I think that doing it with this big of an audience, it cultivated a level of focus that I think is really rare when you're watching any kind of theater. And then throughout the whole performance, I was just so enthralled. And I don't know if anyone else shares that, but yeah, I would like support people doing that before more performances in the future.
Thank you.
I would like to thank Desiree and our veterans and Joel. And thank you all for coming, and maybe we will get funded again and can bring Odysseus home and come back and complete the story, and we hope you'll join us for that. Thank you very much. We're having a reception outside, so please join us for that. Thank you.